Oh, and we're live. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Just getting organised there a wee bit. There we are. Oh, sorry, we're just getting the dogs put away. Just looking a bit unruly. We're transporting them to another room. So, hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining me tonight. I hope you can all hear me okay. If somebody give me a wee shout just and let me know that I'm coming through loud and clear. That would be great. Tonight's episode was looking at the influence of the monomyth on Frank Herbert. And I think we sort of had a good wee look at the process of going from Raglan to Carl Jung to the monomyth. And we had a wee bit of a chat about iconotropy there as well, which is, I think is quite an important thing. And we had a wee sort of had an attempt to settle the Star Wars argument, I think, which is Star Wars a rip-off of Dune? And as much as I think Star Wars is highly derivative of an awful lot of things, I think sound is good, says Brad. Thank you very much, Brad. I don't think it's a rip-off in that sense. It's the source material and the patterns of the monomyth that both follow. So there we go. So hello, I'll just say hello to everybody, by the way. Hi, Brad. Thank you very much for checking in with me on the sound. Sound is good. I accidentally left the microphone hanging way up in the air last night, so it was a bit echoey last night. Chris says loud and clear, Doc. Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks for joining us, guys. As the usual, anything that you would like to ask about this episode, just sort of again this is all about the influences on Frank Herbert, how he constructs his hero and the material that he uses to do it. And these are the major influences. There are plenty of other ones. I think lots of little minor influences here and there. So if, as I said, if you have any questions about this whole sort of mythological approach, and the fact that both obviously Jung's work is Jungian, but the fact that Campbell's work is incredibly Jungian as well. And we were talking a wee bit about sometimes how I think a few of you there work in the IT industry, for example, when your initial conditions are set, if you like, in a particular school of thought or anything, if something's wrong, that's going to create feedback loops, And it's one of those things I think about that particular field that looks at mythology in a kind of from a psychological point of view. And the main fault with it is that that field of study equates myths with dreams, and they're very much not the same thing, I think. Excuse me. Which is pretty much, I think it's pretty clear to anybody that they're not the same thing, but you can the monomyth is very much a constructed system, I think. And I don't know if anybody's into the monomyth. We were chatting last night with a few people there who have considered it and used it in their writing and stuff like that, So it became popular mainly because of George Lucas saying, I used Joseph Campbell's The Monomyth. And I suppose the other fact about Frank Herbert being a bit upset about Star Wars, I think it was pointed out to him on several occasions, that I think that the whole, thank you very much. So I'm just getting a wee bit of juice here. Thank you. Thanks very much. There we go. Forgot to get the precious fluids. So yeah, I mean, I think there's somebody was one of the chaps that one of the podcasts that's on, and I'm kind of new to podcasts. I think it's on Spotify. There's a few Dune podcasts there. I was listening to one of them not too long ago, and it had an interview with Timothy O'Reilly, which is quite interesting because he wrote a book on Dune, on Frank Herbert. And for quite some time, it was a pretty, it was a very good book on Frank Herbert. Let me see. Probably, is it there? Yes, it is. Give me 1 wee second. I keep bringing up so many books at the minute that it's getting a bit awkward up here. There we go. This is the Timothy O'Reilly who's, does all the e-publishing and computer publishing and stuff like that. There we go. Frank Herbert by Timothy O'Reilly. I think you can get this online for free. If you can tell I've scribbled all over yeah, I've heavily annotated this. So it's a very good book on Frank Herbert by Timothy O'Reilly, and I think There's a couple of different editions of it, but I do believe it's available free online. And it's very good, particularly, stuff like It's Not All About Dune, as I said. Um, and there's some good stuff on Under Pressure and on the hero in that. So if anybody's big into Frank, it's a very good book, But Frank, in one of those interviews that we were talking about, sorry, Timothy O'Reilly interviewed Frank Herbert for this book, and I kind of discussed the Star Wars thing with him, and kind of went, would you wise up a bit? That everybody's work is kind of built on top of other people's work, and I think there was a wee bit of element of self-promotion at the time. There we go. Brad says, that's what I loved about finding your channel, the kind of deep dive into what's behind the writing of Dune, or any writing. It shows the connections the writer used that I've never thought of. Thank you, Brad. It's if you pick any piece of work, I think recently we had Sandy Talksfig's got a wee channel on YouTube, Vox Talks, I think it's called. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's really good. She's very clever, very funny. She's talking about people who write books are considered in what they say, if you see what I mean. There's a lot of consideration, a lot of thought, and a lot of planning, you would hope, go into really good books. There's a lot of effort goes into writing a good book. So yeah, it's the fact that, I suppose looking at June, you kind of, from my point of view, you can look at from a lot of PhD points of view, you can look at things in either qualitative or quantitative methods, if you like, or in ways. So the qualitative thing is, why is Frank Herbert's Dune series considered the best science fiction book of all time? The quantitative one is that at the same time, when I was researching this, the argument is it's also the best-selling book of science fiction of all time, which is not even remotely true. Sadly, it's not. Interestingly enough, with a kind of new global audience, it has the potential to become the best-selling science fiction book up till now. But books like, for example, 1984, which is a science fiction book, has been on a lot of curriculums for a long, long time, if you see what I mean. So books like that tend to really, particularly books that end up on school curriculums, tend to really sell incredibly well, There's Grimdark, Elven Lore Master. As usual, back from the gym. I'm looking forward to more discussion. Thanks for joining us, Grimdark. We're just getting rolling, really. So if you've got any questions, we're just all things. As I said, the overall theme here is the disastrous hero and the messianic impulse that periodically overcomes society. And in particular, that it's not just the hero, it's the institutions and that build up around an individual, and that kind of almost take control of the person. And in a sense, then once a person dies, then they allow a myth to build up. They can create and sort of tell any stories they like, So we're on all things myth as usual, but the hero's journey. And tonight, Grimdark, we were having a wee look, as you know, at Joseph Campbell and the Monomyth. And I think you can, whenever you look at, because you've looked at Raglan and Jung, I think you should be able to see all of that, their influence entirely in Campbell's Monomyth and the Hero with 1,000 Faces, Brad says Terry Pratchett is the same with his writing, as he links to many side topics. Yeah. I quite liked Terry Pratchett when he first came out, Brad. I didn't like him because I thought he was a rip-off of, just being young and stupid. I thought he was a bit of a rip-off of Douglas Adams, and I was very wrong. I was very pleased to find I was very wrong. I've read quite a lot of the Discworld novels, but I'm not obsessed with them, and I haven't gone past a certain point, if you like. I know there's an awful lot of them. But yeah, there's a lot of real world inference with Terry Pratchett's Discworld, and so it does have a kind of science fiction commenting on our own society element to it. Writers work in all sorts of ways. Philip K. Dick is particularly interesting. There's a bunch of writers around at this time, but I don't know if you know, some of Philip K. Dick's books are written using I Ching, the oracular system. And in particular, The Man in the High Castle is written that way, which is interesting because there's multiple reality. I don't know if you've read The Man in the High Castle. I haven't watched the TV series, and getting the sense that it went on enormously. I'm very happy to stick with the book. But I think there's 17 different realities in the book. But it's a thing that Philip K. Dick did, that he wrote books based on the I Ching, and there's a bunch of guys doing this sort of thing at the time. It depends on what period you're looking at. There's, as I said, there's a lot of writers or drug abusers or alcoholics, etc. They can get creative in some strange ways. But yeah, all sorts of people have different ways and systems of writing. But that just very interesting that was a kind of oracular way just to determine what happened and kind of what his characters did and so on. It's a bit like just rolling a dice or flipping a coin, I suppose. But yeah, Terry Pratchett's pretty good. I always like, there's a story in Terry Pratchett, isn't it? It's one of the first ones. Is it one of the wizards? He's racing to get to this room to avoid death. The whole point about this room, death's in there the whole time. Just the guy's finally closed in. It's dark in here, isn't it? And it's very much on a par with, we were actually to do with those kind of bilocation stories to do with death, which is interesting. Bilocation is one of the qualities of a Kwisatz Haderach. There you go. It's a bit of a little wander around there, Brad. Grimdark's Elven Lore Master says, would you say Jamis represents the best and worst aspects of the Fremen? He was a brave warrior, loyal to his tribe, and good father to his sons, but also rash, impulsive, and obstinate. It's a very good question, Grimdark. I've been thinking about that because I've obviously just read that bit recently. Jamis represents everything that Paul shouldn't become. He represents male aggression, and he's not very old himself, even though he has got sons, etc., etc. Impulsive, obstinate. He will not listen to authority, and there's a degree of how Stilgar tries to temper and control him. But I believe at the point where Jamis is going to duel Paul, Grimdark, I might be wrong on this, maybe just if I can remember correctly just from the other day, regardless of what Jamis does, he's dead, because Stilgar is going to kill him no matter what afterwards, if you see what I mean. And it's because he invokes the kind of holy aspect to test, I can't remember the exact word, but to test the nature of the myth. It kind of places him in a certain position that I would say kind of mirrors the character of Uliet. I don't know if you know who I mean. Uliet is the Fremen that's sent to kill Pardo Kynes in the little mini adventure in the appendices. And this guy kills himself, basically, and then so Liet Kynes is named after Uliet, but it's kind of almost like a ritualistic sacrifice. But in terms of what he represents, Grimdark, just the best and worst aspects of the Fremen, yeah, it's not I suppose just a black and white thing, but as we say, everybody sort of talks about the good qualities of Jamis, but he is brash, impulsive, violent, highly aggressive, and is prideful, and everything that he does isn't for the benefit of the tribe. It's for his own benefit, I think, Grimdark. So he's an interesting character, but he represents male aggression. And Dune is an anti-war novel, and I personally don't like violence myself, but the whole point is that lesson being slammed into Paul. He represents an awful lot within the story, and you pay for it. Paul pays for it. This is, whenever is that his. I was a friend of Jamis because he taught me that whenever you kill, you pay for it. And the consequences to Paul are actually, there's a wife and children, and it kind of echoes that kind of silly thing from the Austin Powers movies about the henchmen being killed, but they have families and stuff at home, that kind of thing. But and he does have good qualities of the Fremen. Interesting. I was just reading something there a wee second ago, not too long ago, and I think it was something to do with how these people look at the Fremen, and it's. I think, did I try to bookmark it? Give me a wee second, folks, see if I can find it. It's just a comment about. It was about the violence of the Fremen. and how they couldn't see a different way, I suppose. Um, hmm, let me go back a wee bit. Oh, I'll tell you what, folks. I'll not sit and try and find a bit of text in the book, but I'll give you the gist of it. Is that it suggests that the Fremen are extremely violent. What would it be? Almost kind of reactionary in a sense, but that there could be other paths for them, but they're that caught up in their grief that they can't see them. I think something like that. It might be a comment by Jessica. I'll see if I can find that again sometime, Grimdark. But to me, he represents really the absolute stupidity of youth. Um, that kind of male aggression. He really does, and nobody can talk this guy down. And as I said to you, I think it's quite interesting that I think, based on what I was reading the other day, regardless of the outcome of what happens with the fight of Paul and Jamis, that Stilgar will be taking. Stilgar, I think, at that point considers him a threat to the tribe and a threat to his authority. So Stilgar will kill him no matter what happens in that fight. So I think that's the interesting thing. Jamis is doomed from the point where he pushes Stilgar's authority, and once he invokes um, the ability to test the myth, he's enshrined in the same way that Uliet is. I don't know what you think about that. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, what the good qualities, bravery, as you say, brave warrior, and he really, really, it's also a sort of thing that I think he also thinks that Paul can't beat him. It really is his pride that Paul puts him down so badly the first time and could have killed him. It really is his pride that's taken a knock. He's meant to be a good fighter, and that's why Stilgar keeps him. Has still kept him around. I think he is a good fighter. I think he's quite a vicious fighter. But yeah, he's a good father to the sons, as you point out. He also treats the sons equally, because one of them is it Hara's children. One of them is not his own, so he has two sons, but only one of them is his actual son, and he treats them equally. So we get that he has good qualities. I suppose like all human beings, we're all a mixture, aren't we? There we go. Grimdark Elven Loremaster says, I always liked the City Watch characters with Discworld. Vimes and Carrot were funny. Yeah, I kind of caught a wee bit of there's a BBC version of it. At the minute, I'm not too sure what to think of it, but I really quite like those books myself, actually. I think they're very funny. Yeah, they are good. I like that. I'd say that my favorite Discworld books is probably not a way out there one, but it's the ones that feature death heavily. I think Mort and things like that. Go back a minute there, aren't we? Terry Pratchett was excellent. I think his Discworld series will have a long, long legacy. I think, and yeah, I think a lot of people will be enjoying them for a long time to come. I look at kind of. I'll be honest with you guys. I look at Terry Pratchett very much like a modern, um, and people might slag me off this. I look at him as a bit like a modern Charles Dickens. I genuinely do. Just that he writes in a fantasy, environment. He's a few science fiction books as well, hasn't he? Jessica had the extra water, and Jamis was furious is another reason. Yeah, but it's his anger and his rage, and it makes him just totally unreasonable. But it is very much, I think, presented as the anger of male youth. And Paul's very much an opposite to him. Paul's controlled, measured, calm, etc. Has all of that, the ability to do that. It's a very uneven fight, but from Jamis's point of view at the start, he thinks I'll have no bother killing this untrained child. He badly underestimates Paul. He badly misjudges the entire situation. And I think, yeah, even after what Jessica and Paul do, his decision making process is really badly flawed. But I think he's overcome by rage, by anger. There's Karen. Hello, Karen. You lurking? Lurk. So there you go. But yeah, for that reason, actually, the use of the Janus character is really interesting, and it'd be interesting to see how he's played and how that what level of detail they work that into the film. Again, Caron's seen it, but the Janus character is very important for all sorts of reasons. As it both in terms of driving the story, in terms of trying to ground Paul. I think in terms of so he doesn't enjoy killing, the lessons that it teaches Paul. Quite important, I think. And Caron saying Janus is so good in the movie. Excellent. I'm looking forward to seeing that. We only saw a pale hint of him in the David Lynch film, and I think that's in the extended scenes, isn't it? But it's a very interesting point, and again, it's one of a series of one of a series of rebirth and death points in the book for Paul. Brand says, how do you think Frank Herbert used Leto II in context of the monomyth, or had he moved on by God Emperor of Dune? Leto II in Children of Dune goes through initially a whole bunch of the same steps, if you like. Where he diverts with the monomyth, I suppose, is that Leto becomes several aspects of it. And I think we chatted a wee bit about this the other day, Brad. It's that within the context of the monomyth, let me just grab, where are you? Mr. Campbell's book. The Hero with 1,000 Faces. So, I mean, yeah, the monomyth, it's an idea, and people have ideas and the research. And this is a great book to read, by the way, folks. But really, within it breaks down kind of when, I suppose, because Brad, within all these kind of psychological pairings and syzygies and the way Herbert actually writes the thing, the mandala pairings and the way he groups certain characters, and even if you look at how he uses, we talk about color association really in Dune is quite important. But in context of the monomyth itself, and basically, the whole. If I can get this open here to get you the right section, different aspects of it works on so many levels with the God Emperor, I suppose. Let me just say, because he in terms of what the hero's journey, what the hero undertakes, we thought things like the prize, if you like, whatever you want to call it, that. And I suppose things like the beast, slaying the beast, the attaining the pearl of great wisdom. Within the God Emperor sort of thing, it's hard to sort of separate the hero out from divinity, if you see what I mean. And at the same time, you have different aspects of the monomyth, for example, the crossing the threshold, the meeting with the goddess, women as temptress, all of these things. And you can fit Leto II into it, no problem. But he kind of, as much as there should be a separation of hero and god, he's both. And it works on a whole bunch of levels, actually. That's the thing. And I honestly don't know if it's kind of an attempt just to bring in a certain other idea in on top of it. Donald E. Palumbo talks about the kind of overlapping chaos theory and so on. But the various steps that, the monomyth and things like Raglan's ritualistic patterns, the 22 steps that Lord Raglan comes up with, they really are simply put, if you examined, it's just like almost a bit of systems analysis, if you see what I mean. It's observing certain things within certain stories within a certain regional group, if you like, going, well, there's a pattern. I think I can see a pattern. And if you understand that the pattern is that it's a beginning, a middle, and an end, then really that's where, oh, come on, seriously, so the bottom line is that you can identify any kind of real system with a beginning and a middle and an end, and that's if you see what I mean. All things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The attempt to sort of construct Goodness gracious, I can't help. Illustrations is what I'm looking for. The idea of constructing the sense of a universal myth that fits all of these things, when you really don't apply what you're doing to, you know, you don't have a universal approach. It just doesn't work. Um, so I was looking there and I get a wee bit distracted about that, as often do when I try to flick through books and try and run a conversation here at the same time, Grimdark. So, oh, sorry, Brad. So in the context of Monomyth, I'm not sure if Frank believes in it or not, but he uses it. If you understand that, that's kind of the point of these guys. I personally don't, I wouldn't follow their work, but this is what Frank uses. So Grimdark saying Frank might not have been writing a rebuttal to the Monomyth, but he did say, "I'm showing you the superhero syndrome and your own participation in it." Absolutely, these things are frameworks for. I mean, he is attacking the hero, and so there's no reason to think on a number of different levels. Dune is a warning about heroes. So if as much as the Monomyth is there, I suppose the idea is that there is a universality to myths, is what the idea that's being presented. Herbert picks that ball up and runs with it and goes, right, that sounds like a good framework for me to construct my Paul Atreides. Same, and as I said, Paul Atreides goes through 19 of the 22 steps of Raglan's ritualistic thing. So it gives him a framework. And as I said, he uses the Jungian idea for shadings of character. It helps with the writing, to flesh things out. And it allows him to create polar opposites, if you like, on a wheel, if you think about it that way, which is one of the reasons I think Babs had talked about the underuse of like a male trinity within that aspect, whereas the female trinity is pretty good. But I was saying really that the one archetype that Herbert runs with more than any is the syzygy, that opposite male-female pairing, if you like. Yeah, so no, it's an attempt. Again, we talk about things like there's no attempt to give anybody skin color, for example, really too much in Dune. It's that kind of thing. The way we just describe an attempt to make a universal book, I think. He really did want this to get out there and appeal to so many. I think that it's simply what writer doesn't want their work to appeal to so many people on so many levels. So the fact that there is these patterns of universal myth, I think, is helping Frank A construct his hero, and B provide a good framework for the story that C, because it's cyclical in nature, and this is really um, the iterations of the monomyth, Brad, as you were saying, in the context of God Emperor, we go back into it, but it changes, and it's an attempt to show you what ultimate feedback into the system, I suppose, does to it. So I think Frank talks about systemic thinking a fair bit. I'd say he's not qualified, if you understand my meaning, but if it would be hard to look at the monomyth and not understand it as a system, because that's what it is. It's a approach. It's a systemic thinking approach to myth, and looking at the hero and concocting a system out of that. And there's a framework to Campbell's ideas, which is Jung's ideas of the archetypes of the collective unconscious, and then Raglan's ritualistic steps. There are other mythographers who come up with these step-by-step approaches to myth, and it's kind of become it's a popular thing, I think now, but it's not valid, unfortunately. I think it's when you deal with absolutes. If you say everything must be this, ping, it just takes one thing to prove that wrong, and that's the nature of the monomyth, I think. Hope that answered your question, bro. But the God Emperor plays around. He is the beast to be slain. He is the prize. He is the hero. If you see what I mean. So he fits into it in all sorts of ways and almost inverts it. Aqua Baby says hello. I'll catch up a bit, guys. Caron says, I love that quote so much at Grimdark Elven Lore Master. I keep using it when I talk to people at Dune, laughing. I'm showing you the superhero syndrome and your own participation in it. And yeah, absolutely, guys. It's a thing I keep pointing out to you. You're complicit as the reader in the Dune series. And really, if you do we talk about some of the things that we just don't think about, and it really does me, oh. And again, put yourself as a citizen of the Harkonnens, or a citizen of the Atreides, or a citizen of the, or even, it's not a nice place to live, not a good life. I think it's a horrible universe. As much as we think, oh, look at all these individuals and schools of thought, aren't they admirable? That mankind's not being particularly good to itself, I think, at that point. It feels so relevant with the excessive amount of superhero movies we've had of the past decade. Karen, laughing out loud, says Karen, I couldn't agree more. I'm superheroed out, and I'm actually watching The Boys second series at the moment, and it's quite good. But I am even the 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 breakdown, the taking the mick out of the superhero movie, if you know what I mean, that kind of satire, self retrospective type thing. I'm superhero movied out. I'm zombie movied out. I'm werewolf movied out. I'm vampired out. I just can't be bothered anymore. And even the number of Frankenstein's movies, etc., is getting silly. And I'm Sherlock Holmes out, by the way, in terms of TV regurgitating stuff over and over and over again, and that kind of thing. And the detective shows are starting to get a bit silly. She's a detective, he's the devil. Don't get me wrong, Lucifer's very good, but it seems that there's an awful lot of shows where someone's a detective and they're teamed up with some kind of, and let's go on a journey of solving crime and learning what it means to be human together. So that it's a wee point I made in one of my videos about the history of science fiction. As it seems that cinema and big TV media companies are heading down the route of, they're heading towards science fiction to plunder, if you see what I mean. And because I think there's very little fresh stuff out there. I think it was chatting to you guys briefly. Anybody who wasn't here tonight, or sorry, anybody who wasn't here last night, we were talking about the multicultural science fiction organization. If you have a look at their website, I think it's MCSFO or something like that, and it's I think they're linked up to the Atlanta Science Fiction Festival. So my understanding is tomorrow night will be 7 p.m. EDT, but that's midnight GMT +1 here. I think there'll be an online sort of chat with a bunch of Dune scholars and stuff, and I think they're going to be doing that weekly. So if anybody wants to check that out, but the point is, I suppose it's all linked up to the Atlanta Science Fiction Film Festival, and I think a lot of it's going to be virtual. So if anybody's interested in that kind of thing, I had a wee nosy through the website, and it was just an awful big shebang of what looked like an awful lot of good science fiction films and shorts that I haven't seen from all around the world. So if anybody's interested in their science fiction and films and shorts and stuff, go check that out. It might be interesting. I'm not sure if it works outside of the Atlanta area kind of thing. But it looks pretty. It looks like a really good selection of new science fiction. Let me just catch up, folks. We're tearing along here. But yes, the superhero movies, and again, some of them are good and some of them are bad, but they're becoming very formulaic and they're just being churned out. Aqua Baby says had to read up on Jung. Okay, yeah, read up Jung. Yeah. Well, I said that the collective archetypes of the collective unconscious. Aqua Baby, it's a pretty chunky book, but it's a decent enough read. You should find it in most libraries. Grimdark saying that's right. We covered the archetypes of the collective unconscious from Jung. Yeah, this is all one thread, guys. As I said, it's kind of building your knowledge. If you see what I mean, you kind of know about Raglan and absolutely influenced Frank Herbert. And we go, oh, okay, and we can see how that, and even Butler's ideas of the collective unconscious that we looked at in the previous chapter. So this builds your little bits of knowledge up as we go along. Each time we can start to see, I can see that there in Frank's work. Because really, this episode here, where we're looking at this, we're kind of done with that, and it's now time to take all of this knowledge and look at how Frank. So from the next episode, I think we'll look at Leto the First and the Baron Harkonnen as heroes. And from now on, we'll be looking at how all this stuff's applied to Dune. And of course, we've got a massive chapter on Paul Atreides coming up. It's the biggest episode we have. It's about nearly an hour long, But yeah. And again, guys, a lot of the stuff's already up there. So if you wanted to move on with the videos, you could. It's just there's bad sound on particularly the music hurts people and stuff at the end. There's a set of the deep dives of Dune. That's all of these put together without the music. So there's no music at the end. But the way we have them here with the subtitles and stuff. This is kind of how I'm happy professionally putting this stuff up here, I suppose, especially as I've had to learn all this stuff on the fly. So let's just catch up a wee bit, folks. Enjoying the crack as always. Hope you're all keeping well tonight. It's another stormy, wet one, and the police are in the estate again, under siege. So we were having a wee chat about the Janus character earlier on, and I'm still got a wee bit of a cold, but I don't think I'm coughing as much. Getting there, taking all the cough medicine. But yeah, it's that is a very good quote. Yeah, there's the superhero syndrome, the Camelot pattern. There's a few different things, but absolutely, in terms of the hero, is completely under attack here by Frank Herbert, as is science fiction to a degree. Excuse me. But I don't know what you guys think. Are you all sort of a bit kind of worn out with all, the superhero, vampire, zombie kind of stuff? I mean, there are wee gems in amongst all of that stuff, but it's just so much of it. Aquababy says, I think Herbert undermines the monomyth. I think that he's using analytical psychology to orientate his relationship to the readers with respect to the monomyth. But there's, as I said, Aquababy, there's an awful lot of Jung in the monomyth, and in Campbell, there's an awful lot of Jung's work in Campbell's work, and I think I pointed out the other day, actually, this edition, as much as it was, I think this is a revised edition. For example, just to read it to you, it says first edition 1949, second edition 1968. This is the Hero of the Thousand Faces. For the second edition, minor corrections made and references to the collected works of C.G. Jung and standard edition of Sigmund Freud have been substituted wherever appropriate. So there you go. There's a lot of Jung and Freud in here, and it is that myth and dreams. But and what you're saying, let me just check. I think I totally agree. As I said, it's not about whether I'm into this stuff or not. Personally, Aquababy, all of this is about what Frank Herbert used. So you're absolutely correct. He is using it to orientate his relationship to the readers with respect to the monomyth, but not just that. As we talked about yesterday, it combined with the Jungian mandalas and all this, it really does actually inform his writing style quite a lot, and how he constructs his characters in terms of personality, psychology, action, and to create opposites. So it's a big part of his writing. And one thing I sort of pointed out in the video there is it's not a thing that he just does with Dune. He uses this kind of thing in a lot of his writing. Jung's all over Frank Herbert's work, basically. And if you look at The Dragon in the Sea, if you're really into psychology and the psychological science fiction, and really like what you read in Dune, then read Frank Herbert's first book, The Dragon in the Sea. It's also called Under Pressure, which I think is the best title, and it's also called 21st Century Sub, I think. So it's got 3 different titles depending on where you buy it. And it's a powerhouse of psychological pressure. It's a really good book. It's sometimes I would argue that I think it's Frank Herbert's best novel. It's so tight, but the sense of pressure, a lot of the psychology that's used in Under Pressure is then regurgitated, and Under Pressure is almost like a dummy run for Dune, if you see what I mean. Except it's in the underwater instead of in the sand, and so but there's a lot of if you understand your Dune very well, read that book and you'll get all sorts of little the birthing canal thing, the rebirth, and so again you can apply the different steps of the hero's journey in that, apply them to the crew of the submarine, and that's called the Fenian Ram, I believe, which is another one of Herbert's nods to actual real events and Irish mythology. There you go. But yeah, I agree with you, Aquababy. As I said, these are the tools that Frank Herbert uses. That's why we've been talking about him, to help him construct his hero. From the next episode on, we're going to show you how it works with different heroes and even pairings of them. I'll just catch up a wee bit, folks. Still like as horrible as 40k settings. The universe, the Imperium there. Grimdark. Yeah, it's just the endless war, isn't it? That's how I look at the Star Wars universe now, by the way. Um, Having watched all the new films, I just came to the conclusion. Well, yeah, Star Wars is about perpetual war. Um, Whereas what it was about whenever it ended at Return of the Jedi was a bit different. I thought, but I think yeah, Star Wars is a very doesn't offer a particularly hopeful message anymore. New hope for what? More war. If you see what I mean. Um, let's just catch up, folks. Right. Grimdark Caroline, to be fair, got exaggerated and turned into clickbaity headlines. Only there was point contrast to making a movie as a personal project versus part of. Okay, so I'm not following there, folks. But yeah, well, a bigger set of projects, or whatever one could call it. Readers transfer onto characters. Oh, hang on, I lost that there. Let me get where'd it go? Goodness, we've got a lot to catch up on, folks. I'll just run through your comments here. So Aquaby says readers transfer onto characters as a way to relate to them. Quite subversive. Yeah, it's all almost. And again, if you think about it, right from when you get to the end of the Dune series, you could argue that Frank Herbert is imprinting Paul Atreides on you. I'm sure that goes beyond the formulaic nature that Denny feels. Garth Ennis is Northern Irish, if you didn't know who the boys calling. I do know that, Grimdark. Grimdark, long time ago, Garth Ennis, he's a 2000 AD guy. Can you not tell he's not? He wrote, there's Judge Dredd universe, there are Irish judges. So in Judge Dredd's universe, Ireland's called Murphyville. And the judges have spud guns. I particularly like the spud gun to roasties. It's brilliant. But that's Garth Ennis. He did that a long time ago. He brought the Irish judges, I believe, to 2000 AD, and I particularly enjoyed it. There's a Judge Dredd story called "When Irish Pies Are Smiling," I think. But yes, indeed. Yeah, we talked about Northern Ireland not producing science fiction writers, but we have produced a few people who've headed over kind of 2000 AD ways, and they've ended up. I mean, if you're 2000 AD is arguably the best apprenticeship any comic book writer or artist could have. I'm not too sure about how they in the past about how they got paid, but they've all, it's a real talent pool. And as I think I pointed out to you, that the old joke was being somebody who's read 2000 AD since he was 4 and read Star Lord probably since I'm about 2.5, I think, 3 maybe. America used to come over and poach the Americans comic houses used to come over and poach all their staff. I think almost every 7 or 8 years it got silly, because you suddenly got a whole bunch of new artists and what's going on here, and you missed the good artists and stuff like that. But it happened regularly. Apparently, I think the American companies used to just literally book a hotel opposite the bill and anybody who walked over could have a job, from my understanding. But the 2000 AD writers and artists, I think, were very badly paid for a long time. There is a DVD on the history of 2000 AD, a wee documentary film that I bought, and I don't think it's here, but I will dig it up for you, and highly recommend it. It's really good, very insightful into the British comic book industry. The British comic industry is not like the American ones at all, and 2000 AD, I suppose, was just that one comic that managed to survive the whole 70s, 80s, 90s through Thatcher's Britain, everything, and a lot of other comics fell by the wayside, and it kind of brought in the best of what it could and tried to maintain them. But it's quite interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of big talent out of 2000 AD. Let's see. But yeah, Garth Ennis. I'm enjoying the boys, actually. It's quite yeah. The level of swearing is very Northern Irish, I think, in it. Karen says, because he also praised Marvel, maybe even the same interview for hiring Chloe Zhao for the newest movie to prevent their movies from being too artistically stale. Oh, is this a sort of a discussion about Denis Villeneuve and stuff? Yeah, the one thing I thought that the superhero costumes in films are getting more and more absurd. I don't know what you think, but they're just looking dafter and dafter. So Jung's collective memory is truly unlocked in past memory through the spice agony. Yes. The collective unconscious, the female line for the Bene Gesserit, that's the spice agony that kicks open the other memory. Yeah, but as I said, Brad, I don't think of it as Jung's collective memory anymore. I tend to think of it as Butler's. Grimdark saying he praised the Eternals director. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If you put on a superhero film at the minute, I probably just wouldn't watch it. It's how turned off I am by it. It's just unless it's something really ironic and taking the mick out of it, taking the piss out of it completely. I'm not turned on by superhero movies anymore at all, which is sad, I suppose. Not too much of a good thing, but the old days I would like for example, zombie films. There used to be not that many of them. Great, brilliant, Now, everybody's got a zombie. Herbert probably saw himself as providing a good story that's engaging, but in the context of social media, I can't help but thinking of it as behavior modification. But this orientation is so GS. GS, could you expand your acronym for me, Aqua Baby? I'm not too sure what you mean. It's so GS. Providing a good story that's engaging in the context of social media, I can't help but thinking it as behavior modification. Well, it's a deceit. So yeah, humans alter each other's behavior all the time just by engaging with them verbally or whatever. But the book, I always argue that the first entire Dune book is a deceit against the reader. It's tricking you. It's setting you up by making Paul, really making you engage. And again, that process of construction of the hero, the monomyth, the ritualistic steps, and making him really charismatic, making the situation around him sympathetic. And lifting and making him literally a fish out of water, if you almost think about it, putting him in with the Fremen, immersion in another culture. This young man should not survive, but by hook he does, and we absolutely root for him, totally. Even though he's a wee bit strange to us, but we think, is this going? We really do root for him, and then he's my goodness. And I suppose the thing about that is it constantly moves within your morality. You go, then he kills billions of people, and you go, oh dear, oh my goodness, he's this guy. Then he provides justification for it, and you go, yeah, I can see it. He stays a hero too. You don't become repulsed by him, and that's part of Herbert's warning. And then he does it again too, and you get the God Emperor, and you get again Leader the Second. We totally root for this charismatic young man. Oh dear, and his sister. Come on, guys, you can, and everyone's out to get them. You're set up. The nature of the plot and what happens is all set up for what Herbert's trying to teach you very subtly, I suppose. And again, he warned you, and then he does it again, and I warned you again, but again, we all love this stuff, but when we think of it in great terms of science fiction, heroic, fantastical novel and so on. But when we do sit back and ask the hard questions that Frank wants us to ask, then Dune is a set of books that really makes you think very hard about what you've been thinking about when you're reading it, and really makes you question your choices. I don't know if you know that I saw an interview. I have a set of history DVDs. It's called The World at War, and it's an exceptional set of history programs done in Britain at the end of I think in the 70s, and it has really because of the evidence that it collects. It has so many interviews with so many participants from all sides in the war, and Hitler's secretary, for example, is interviewed in that, which is a real eye opener. But you get people talking about Hitler, and they're going, "I thought he was a nut," and the next thing I'm in the crowd, and he's going, "Yeah, and the next thing, everyone around me is going nuts. And the euphoria, and I felt caught up in the moment. And the next thing, I'm sitting giving Nazi salutes, and people talk about this, and they don't know why. And I had something about me knew it was wrong, but everyone else was doing. I got caught up in the moment, the euphoria, the messianic impulse, and genuinely, people, and you get into the sense of some of those interviews, they're totally, absolutely ashamed of what they've done, but they don't understand it. There's a level of control that they think they lost, that they were caught up in the wave, if you see what I mean. And it's a common thing about sort of ordinary German people talking about the whole Hitler thing not being Nazis, but why they got caught up in the moment. It's very insightful. And again, Herbert's coming out of World War II. young man. But if you think of the context of what he had grown up with and the time, as much as I think he was injured and medically retired out of the Navy, I believe. But the world's at war at that point. It's not a good time. So there's a lot of what's happened in World War II, things like Hitler and all those guys, and starting to see this happening again, possibly. And if you look at the Bay of Pigs invasion and stuff like that, so yeah, providing good emergent. I don't know. Still don't know what GS means, by the way. I'll probably hang on, scroll down, see if somebody's told. But general semantics. Thank you very much, Aqua Baby. Again, what I've said, all of these systems like general semantic, blah blah, it's rhetoric, to a degree, repackaged, rebranded, and add a hint of snake oil salesman. Rhetoric's the art of persuasion. Would you like? I'll give you a good example of this, but I'll give you the good quote on it from Douglas Adams, if you like. Is that anyone can talk the four legs off a was it Archer and Mega Donkey, but only I can persuade it to go for a walk afterwards. If you see what I mean, that's just speech. It's understanding that kind of thing. Speech, the way we talk to each other, is only about 20% of our actual linguistic approach to it. If you look at me and the way my hands gesticulate, my strange facial expressions, I get my wife thinks my head moves. I move my head ridiculously fast. She thinks I'm a bit hawk-like. How I express myself to you, it works on so many levels beyond just the words coming out of my mouth, if you see what I mean. But I could convince you guys to do all sorts of things if I really put my mind to it. And the point is to do it in such a way that you would think it's your idea in the first place. That's kind of, it's a skill, and it's a learnable skill. And it's been a learnable skill for a couple of thousand years. So that's kind of why I'm not too impressed by things like general semantics and so on. What a great name, though, isn't it? It says it all. Let me catch up with you guys a wee bit. Karen says, yeah, pretty tired of superhero movies, laughing out loud. Brad says, if you want to see an amusing superhero movie, I suggest you look up Mystery Man. Piss funny. Yeah, I've seen it a long time ago. I really like it. Mystery Man's really good, actually. Is it Jeffrey Rush? Is it Frankenstein Casanova? Is that what you call the bad guy? There's a lot of good. Yeah, it's a good film. I have to say, it's a good film. If you can't say what you mean, you can hardly mean what you say. Is it good? Yeah. I'm trying to remember. See the Sphinx. Wes Studi, isn't it? I love Wes Studi. I see. Just when he's in films, he's great. I don't know too much of his catalog, but he's the very good film. Mystery Man. Let's go back a bit, isn't he? He's not Ben Stiller and all. There's some good people in that. Chris Gibbs says, I read Conan Doyle as a kid. Robert Louis Stevenson as well. Excellent, yeah. The first depiction I saw would have been Basil Rathbone. Jeremy Brett brought something to what we may never see again. Bless him. Chris, I'm in the same boat with you, actually. So my first Sherlock Holmes is as a young kid, all those sort of 6 o'clock BBC Two. Basil Rathbone films, a lot of them are on the YouTube. And is it Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce? I can't remember. Might be thinking wrong. They're brilliant. I love the atmosphere of them. Great films. Takes me back to the time you get things like that, the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan films and the RKO films, But the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes is, I don't know if got an audience from around the world, folks, but if you don't know the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes, which is British TV series done by Granada, and I think possibly the late 80s, early 90s, is the best Sherlock Holmes ever. And he is the best Sherlock Holmes. I think he went mad playing it, didn't he? It is, and the attention to detail is incredible. And I have a very big kind of heavy duty annotated giant volumes that you need a big thing to put down on, and just everything about Victorian Britain, that gaslight, the Sherlock Holmes. It's a great book. I love the Sherlock Holmes, but Jeremy Brett is the most accurate, the best, and I think just the most, hyper energetic. He's brilliant. I love him. I have them all on DVD, and oddly enough, my wife's gotten really into Sherlock Holmes. She likes Elementary, and Yeah, Elementary in particular. But I've kind of tried to get her to watch these ones, but my wife sort of says she doesn't like period dramas for some reason. But the Jeremy Brett, Sherlock Holmes, brilliant. You could probably get the whole lot of them really cheap or even online for nothing. I highly recommend you watch them if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan. Even the music's great. Aye, brilliant. Love them. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I don't know, but there was something about Chris Jeremy Brett. I'll have to head on down, but and see where our conversation is going. But I believe he was found outside of Arthur Conan Doyle's prop house in Edinburgh, screaming. To I think it was to be released from the character or something. But I think he was ill. I'm not too sure what the. I don't know the exact details, but he wasn't able to film a few of them, and they brought your what was it? Who is it? Who did they bring on the cover for him? Is it the actor that played as Moriarty? It's your man from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I can't remember his name at the minute. But yeah, Sherlock Holmes, Jeremy Brett ones are the best, I think. Don't like to say that kind of thing, but they really are the best. But I think Basil, I love the Basil Rathbone ones. Aqua Baby says the beginning of June feels claustrophobic with the travel and occupation of Arrakis. Jessica and Yui amplify the sense of isolation. Hmm. Yeah, you do always sort of get the sense that I understand what you mean. I think I get that generally from the Dune world. And I suppose that's what's good about when you're with the Fremen is that they're out in the open desert, that kind of thing, that there is a freedom to it. But you always get the sense that everybody's hiding underground or behind shields or, that they're just not safe. But yeah, Yui and Jessica really make the story tense given the impending doom of House Atreides. It's a good trick, isn't it? Because Frank Herbert gives you a lot of you can't, you're forewarned. So the fact that you're still tense about what's going to happen, even though you know Yui's the bad, you know this stuff, but he still manages to create that tension in you, the reader. I think that's real talent. Bark Lounger, hey Bark Lounger, hello ho. Garth Ennis is a bloody genius. Love everything he's done. He's up there with Alan Moore for sure. He did a comic book called Cross that will never be filmed for TV or film. Haha. And long live 2000 AD, says Bart. Just excellent. I've missed out on so much over the years, Bart Lounger. But yeah, I'm trying to remember. Did he do? I'm trying to remember. Did he do Animal Man? Possibly. You might know if you're very much into Garth Ennis. But yeah, I was having a good wee chat about he's a 2000 AD guy. So I was talking about Judge Joyce, is it? The Irish judges. I must have a look at 2000 AD again. It's been a while. I kind of always every now and then have a nosy at it. I miss the annuals. That's what I miss. And I don't mean the yearbooks. So the 2012 Dread film was awesome. Grimdark Elven Lore Master says it was brilliant. I loved it. And thank goodness, because the one that came out in the 90s, it must have been 95, I think, if I remember correctly, because I saw it on a boat. It was abysmal. Brad says, my mates reckon I should write a book called How to Lose Friends and Influence People. I'm not subtle in discourse. I wouldn't worry about it, Brad. I'm known as blunt force trauma over here. And my wife's worse. But we're kind of just tell you exactly what we think. I hope it doesn't ever bother anybody. My opinions are just as good as anybody else's, but don't have to agree with them or anything. But it's the same thing. No, don't. I think it's just as long as you present yourself well. Even if you have awkward questions or things are difficult, you want to know an awkward topic. It's no bother. How to lose friends and influence people. I don't really have too many friends to Just saying, it was Casanova Frankenstein. Yes, Jeffrey Rush, wasn't it? Excuse me. There we go, folks. So yeah, has anybody got any more questions? We've caught up a bit on the discourse there. We've had a wee chat about Sherlock Holmes and tension and Dune and so on. We're on the Dread and also Grant Morrison wrote around. That's Animal Man, thank you. But he's super. I'm getting some of them mixed up. Grant Garth, yeah, I know where I'm getting them mixed up. There's one of my favorite all time comics, Bark Lounger, is I read it when I was very let me say no, not very young. Must have read it in 1993, I think, 92 or 93. And it's I still have it somewhere. It's a single issue of Animal Man, and it's the one where Wile E. Coyote is a messiah to all the cartoon characters. Have you seen that? It's incredible. um, one of my I'm a big Wile E. Coyote fan, and I've never been able to look at Wile E. Coyote the same way ever again. Animal Man, it was, yeah. There's a the 2000 AD guy. See, that's a good example. Grant Morrison, he was but people getting pinched and stuff. But I'm trying to think. There's another chap from Belfast, I think, isn't. Let me see very quickly who I'm thinking on. Do, 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 do. No, no. Sorry, the person I'm thinking on there is actually Garth Ennis, because I was thinking about stuff from Northern Ireland, and I was thinking about Preacher guys, and I was going, which of the 2000 AD guys is that? And of course it is. It's Garth Ennis. There's an awful lot. Yeah, that would say a lot about where he's from. I think that Preacher. So yeah, but yeah, he's excellent. Very, very good. I know a lot of the 2000 AD guys have been very successful as well. Oh, I'll tell you what, one more very quickly. I'll tell you what, if I can think of who I'm thinking on. Excuse me one wee second. Oh, that's the wrong thing to click. Where are you? There we go. Bear with me 1 second. That's who I'm thinking on. And of course, yeah. Brandon McCarthy, folks. Not that he's Northern Irish, so I thought maybe he was. But he's another one of those guys that Brendan McCarthy's kind of a very big influence behind the new Mad Max film. So yeah, there we go. Grant Morrison wrote a run of Animal Man, but he's superb. Also, best run of Animal Man ever. Oh, hang on, missed a couple of things there, guys. Stallone even hated the 1995 Dredd film. He thought it wasn't faithful to the comics at all. It certainly wasn't. I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. You get the sense that he had a good bit of input in that, I think. Should have sent Stallone off to the Radlands. Well, they did, and he came back. But yeah, I don't know what number that Animal Man that is, folks. But if anybody hasn't read it, it's kind of it's kind of where Wile E. Coyote is like Jesus Christ. It's an incredible comic book. It's really sad, by the way. Yeah. So there we go. But there's a lot of the 2000 AD guys have done their own thing, and they're all over the place, and a lot of their properties are really well regarded. There you go. Let's see. God Emperor Coyote. That would be interesting to see. Yeah. Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner in the Dune universe on Arrakis. Meet. That would be fun. Aqua Baby says, I wonder if it's because of Jung that the reason that Herbert has not many female characters in Dune. He needs more characters like symbolic expressions of archetypes. Well, yeah, in terms of I understand what you mean, Aqua Baby. There are a good few female characters in Dune. But in terms of the heroic journey and the nature of the hero, the hero in this case is often male, and it's a warning about that type of hero, I suppose. But the female characters, I think, are written in a different way in the Dune series, and we were sort of talking about who is our hero in the last two Dune books, and because Miles Tegg doesn't fit the Camelot pattern at that point, unless something would happen to make him fit the Camelot pattern. Idaho fits into the very briefly into a hero pattern, but it's probably possibly the Sisterhood in terms of their actions as an organization. But we've got a good few interesting female characters there in the last two books. But it tends to be that certain things kind of get fleshed out more in different parts of Herbert's Dune series, But it might not be Young. I think it's maybe more to do with just the nature of the hero is often male in the particular types of heroes that we're looking at, or that Frank's looking at. Ever heard of comic Johnny the Homicidal Maniac? No, I haven't, Brad. But JTHM for sure sounds fun. Is that one of Garth Ennis's ones? Are there any other authors that also does this? Maybe Chris Clement or Marvel Joss Whedon. Have a good night. Aqua Baby, if you're off, all the very best. Thank you very much. Oh, what? Did I misread your comment, Aqua Baby? That Herbert has so many female characters in June. Sorry, I misread that. I thought you said no. Do apologize. I wonder if it's because of Jung that the reason that Herbert has so many female characters. I do apologize there, Aqua Baby. I was misreading that. Yeah. Um, yeah. Again, the pairings, I suppose, with the syzygies, we do need that thing. But I think a lot of the female characters are written in a different way, and I think that's to do with his wife's input there. But those that are involved in archetypes, I think. Yes, to your point. Sorry about that. That was a completely. I read one word wrong there, and it entirely changed the meaning. Do apologize, Aqua Baby. And if you're off, all the best and have a good one. Let me just catch up. Any other answers? Also, do this maybe Craig, Chris, Mark, Marvel, John Sweden. Have a good night. Gene Austin. I think lots of people write with plenty of female characters. The world, a good balanced writer. There are female characters as much as there are male characters. Um, Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I think the argument within all of that, especially even these things like a strong female character, is that strength or are we talking about an action? Well, to me, a strong character is well written and well fleshed out. It's got nothing to do with it, that kind of thing. So yeah, there are plenty of writers who do, plenty of writers. I'd say Ian M. Banks is one. I'd say the culture books are female protagonist heavy. Ever heard of? Oh, so that was a no to. I haven't heard of the Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, bro. Just catching up with you folks. To touch back on superhero movies, says Carol, being everywhere. I feel like it's why the Dune movie coming out right now is very fitting, including how Part One serves a bit like bait to unsuspecting moviegoers. Well, it's hitting a bunch of people fresh, as you say, Karen. There's always going to be people who've read Dune, people who haven't, or people who've seen the other versions who haven't. So, it is something fresh, and that type of, in particular, it's golden age, or if you want to call it that. But a lot of the science fiction that is coming to the screen is kind of from the 50s and 60s, and has been for a while. And I'm not sure why, to be honest with you. But yeah, it has a fresh feeling about it. Grimdark Elven Lore Master says Warren Ellis, Garth Ennis, Dave Gibbons, etc. All 2000 AD writers that are part of the British wave of comics. Yeah, it's a periodic wave, I think. But as I said, they do come and plunder. I always remember reading 2000 AD up to a point, and then all the particular certain artists, certain writers just disappeared, and you did get a bunch of new people in, and it was often sometimes kind of hard to accept them initially because you get used to certain art styles and certain writers, But you did, often, these guys would kind of give them, off you go and let's see what they do. And some of them are playing in the world of Judge. And you've got the staff writers, I suppose, like of John Wagner and all. Or not that they're staff writers, but the core writers. Dave Gibbons, yeah. You got Pat. There's a whole cadre of people. There, Pat Mills, Alan Moore, John Wagner. The creator of Judge Dredd is also the creator of A History of Violence, for example. So there we go. But there's a lot of good guys there. I think I've got my favorites, Esquire and stuff like Carlos Esquizera. Is it Esquizera? I'm very bad at remembering his name. Excuse me. I've something to show you, by the way, folks. Here we go. Somebody was asking me the other day. It was quite possibly yourself, Grimdark. I can't remember, but it was about Schlonny and how he fitted into the heroic pattern. So this is Schlonny, by the way. This is what I was looking for, and you can see this is another 2000 AD, and this is Pat Mills and Simon Bisley, and reasonably adult-ish type comic, if you like. It was originally shown in 2000 AD. And it's this in particular, the Horn God, is almost a treatment of the hero as well. And a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about, and it relates to several types of myths and tanistry, and Slyfeg and Crom Croch and Warps. So Slane's a kind of a barbarian warp spasm. He's an amalgam of a whole pile of Irish mythological heroes, and the Horn God is an analysis on that, and it's an environmental book as well, I'd say. and it's exquisitely drawn. Absolutely beautiful. You know, some of the artwork in it is absolutely just delicious. Very detailed, and it's particularly. So I got a couple of tattoos from this. But that was just to show you Swanee from 2008, which is very good. Tell you what, that'd make a hell of a film. I'd go see that. There's an awful lot of properties that 2080 is sitting on. Judge Dredd's not their only thing, and to be honest with you, a lot of them would make really good TV series or films. I think they're trying to maybe head that way towards production, but I don't pay too much. But Strontium Dog, Road Tripper, Judge Anderson herself, and there's a lot of classic stuff there. I think the ABC Warriors would be great to see on the TV. I think all the little kids who love robots, I think they go nuts for that. ABC Warriors would put the Transformers to rest very easily, I think. Let me just catch up again, folks. Oh goodness, we jumped ahead. Somebody questioned Jane Austen there. Not too sure what you mean about Jane Austen, Aqua Baby. Oh, other authors that use Jung. Don't think Jane Austen's around at the same time. JTHM, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac is classic stuff. Very hard to find. Brad Rose. Right. Going to be unpacking some of my books today. I might be running across my copy of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. I must check that out. Did you answer for that? Me was that Garth Ennis, by the way? Were you saying? Tell you what, a very quick look. Oh, I like the style of that. That looks quite good. Owen Vasquez, if I'm pronouncing the gentleman's name right. Huh. Interesting. Have a wee look at some point. Don't get near comic shops much anymore. I've decided because I really like to. I think I was telling you about the Lone Wolf and Cub books, which I really like, and I have a lot of them. But would like to reread them, and they're so they're very compact little mangas produced by Dark Horse Comics. The Lone Wolf and Cub. They're so small now. I really would like to buy a bigger size format to read them. But I'm missing nine of them, which is really sad. Warren Let's just catching up. Let's see. Got quite a bit of the Tales of New Earth Road Tripper omnibuses. The Jerry Finley Day and Dave Gibbons runs were fantastic for Road Tripper. Yeah, and that kind of is a kind of hangover from the old Battle comic, wasn't it? Jerry Finley Day worked on Charlie's War, I think, Grimdark. So yeah, Road Tripper is really good. As you can see, my wee bio chip, wherever it appears. That's my own wee version. But yeah, it's a very, very good story. I will enjoy. I've got a couple of the video game that came out a while back. Always check the printing number. If you have first editions, you'll have a rare gem. They've gone through 8 printings. I think today. Oh, where do we go? I think today's audience might shun the intellectual integrity of Dune and think of it as boring. They did the same thing in 1984 with Dune. While that movie is a bit dry, it serves the story well, I think. Yeah, I really enjoyed the David Lynch Dune. I loved it. And as I said, I hadn't read the books, Bark Lounger, whenever it came out, so it was the thing that led me to the books. And I think it's a great movie. I really enjoy it. It's a product, again, what they're trying to do in a couple of hours, I suppose. An awful lot of exposition, but exposition followed by there's something of the sense of the operatic about Lynch's Dune, I think, which is quite good. And as I said, I think it would make a great musical. I think you can, put your hand in the box, overdub it or something. Keep the film the way it is and overdub it with music and turn it into a cinematic experience. I think that would be great. Interesting that the female characters in Dune were on average more formidable and capable than the average male characters, Bene Gesserit and Honored Matres. If you actually go into the detail of it, Carlos, at the very Margot Fanning has a word imprinted inside. This is how the Bene Gesserit would have taken the throne, by the way, if some people were wondering. She's on Gedi Prime after the Arakeen affair to get impregnated by Phaedrutha to preserve that line, but they plant a suggestion in his head. It's the same, by the way, with Jamis. And I think actually we were talking about Jamis earlier. there's a word already. There's a word suggestion imprinted, and I think Jessica actually uses it so that he's afraid. But I think before Paul fights Fade, that he's given I think the command word is passed. I'm reading Dune again, by the way, and I haven't got to this bit, but I think it's passed from Margot Fenring to Jessica to Paul so that he can just shut down Fade Rutha if he wants with a word, but he doesn't do it. But I think Paul knows the word, and there's such a word for Fade Rutha. So Fade Rutha. So the question is, at the end of the day, somebody was asking about the Bene Gesserit's abilities. If they've got they could just go, paralyze, and suddenly your emperor who's sitting on the throne is a drooling vegetable or something like that, and they can completely control. So that I think there are powers that are even hinted at that aren't used by the Bene Gesserit cast that are actually utter control. The voice gives them complete control over men. So on average, you're saying more formidable and capable than the average male characters, Benny. Much more so, I think. And they're little tiny details in the Dune that you go, wow, okay, that did the Reverend, it's quite possible that the Reverend Mother could have implanted a word like that into Paul, if you think about how the things are working. So it's maybe just threads that the author thinks that's useful there. It doesn't maybe work with another character, but they're very deadly. And Patrick Stewart's take on Gurney is the price of admission. I think it's great. Patrick Stewart's I was saying to you, Patrick Stewart's in Excalibur as well, and it's a very very similar role in a way, actually. If you know that, kind of Leon de Grant's in that sort of sense of the film is a bit of he would be Guinevere's father. But in that sense, in the film, he's Arthur's father-in-law. Kind of acts in a bit of a way similar that Gurney does to Paul. But yeah, I think he's really good. The shield fight in particular, you young pup, you young pup. Yeah, it's great. You see, that's what I mean. The film's so quotable. But yeah, Gurney's. But I like everybody in that film. By the way, there's not a single person that's just not great with whatever little thing they're given by David Lynch. If you see, I mean, there's a lot of the actors in that film, Park Ledger. I don't know if you agree with me, but they're given so little to work with. But it's what they do is so iconic. If you see what I mean. Rogue Trooper's getting a movie adaptation from Duncan Jones. That might be reasonably good then. Interesting. That's Duncan Jones who directed Moon, I believe. Is that right? David Bowie's son. Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to see Rogue Trooper. I hope he's blue. Dear, there's not enough blue people represented on the TV and cinema these days, guys. I think so. All the Rogue Troopers are blue with white hair. I think nice to see Venus. Was it Venus Blue Jeans as well? As the female character there. It's a great name. Sloan and Rogue Trooper would make awesome shows. I think they would. Sloan, he killed 500 people that day. Didn't think it too many. I went to school with a girl who looked like Uko. Oh dear. It's a common thing, I think, in the Irish epics. I think certainly is it Cuchulainn? Is it Cuchulainn on his trying to woo Emir? I think something like kills 100 to his left and 100 to his right is usually, and he still didn't think it too many. It's a great phrase. For anybody who doesn't know, that's kind of Sloaney's thing. He just slaughters hundreds of people and still not think it too many. But he's a warp spasm. It's great comics. I'm sure there's some of the older ones before the Horned God were pretty good too. There we go. Yep, Vasco's joining the homicidal maniac is twisted and funny as hell. Real good read. I like stuff like that. Yeah. I must check it out. I'm right about Austen. I had to teach Jane Austen for a wee while. I used to teach Jane Austen's comparative literature with Bridget Jones's Diary for my sins. Not my curriculum, but I did teach it. DR and Quench, Brad. Now we're talking. That's why I put the DR in front of my name is diminished responsibility. I love DR and Quench and modeled my life heavily on them. That's all I can say. If anybody hasn't watched DR and Quench, The Unquenched doing it as an adult cartoon is something I'd love to see. Oh, wow, absolutely. Absolutely. Brilliant idea. Yeah, somebody should do it. Totally. Who's that? Is that Alan Moore again? I think DR and Quench are kind of comic book from 2008. They're kind of two alien school kids, for want of a better word, actually. So there's, I don't know, DR and Quench. DR is what is it? Waldo, DR Hobbs, and Ernest Quench are their names. There's something of a Clockwork Orange about them. There's something of Animal House about them. I don't know. There's something that Bill and Ted about them, and there's something about Rambo or just uber maxi ridiculous killing. The overkill, very good, very funny, very funny. Uh, very funny comics. If you haven't read the DR and Quench, I've got the complete DR and Quench here, Brad. I love it. Brad was overdubbed back to Hercules Return. Absolutely. Anybody who hasn't seen Hercules Returns, check it out. Good film. It's an interesting idea, that kind of, having those kind of experiences, I think. The last time I went to see a film that was an experience, as in that the audience participated in it. Well, I'll tell a lie, the last two films that happened, one was the original Ghostbusters. The whole audience was really into it. And the other one was The Exorcist. I went because it had been banned in Northern Ireland for a long time, and eventually I was able to go see a midnight showing of it, and we were all just laughing at it so much. It was very funny, though. Everybody just joking about it. Very small crowd. Bark says, at any rate, wanted to pop and say hi. I'm in Canada, by the way, so a little time difference, and I'm off to work. Have a splendid time. Cheers. No worries, Bark Lounger. All the very best. Have fun at work, or I hope it goes by quickly. Thanks very much for joining us and engaging. Anytime, sir. Come on back. Thank you. Have anybody got any other wee questions? Again, I think I'll just run to midnight tonight, folks, at the latest, because I'm still a bit bunged up, and my sleep is off all over sorts of things. But I've got an awful lot of things to do about the house and a bit of writing, so I'm going to sit up and write all night, basically, and possibly watch a film on the out of the corner of my eye. I might watch the rest of the boys, actually. But yeah, there's so much from 2000 AD, folks. I don't know. I know some of you guys, America, Canada, and around the world and so on. So I don't know how much of it you can get there. You used to get these kind of reprints of the 2000 AD stories for, is it Fleetway Eagle comics over in America, and then they'd come back over the Atlantic, if you see what I mean. But there's an awful lot of good stuff. And you kind of see. I'll tell you something, guys. There's the John Wick story. I can point you to a 2000 AD story that's the same thing long before it. You see 2000 AD turning up all over the place. Doms, rockabilly, pyromaniacs, sociopath, school kids in space. Yeah, there is something of Animal House about it, but yeah, they used to do. I don't know if you remember this, Brad. What DR and Quench used to do, a kind of DR and Quench's agony aunt type page. It was advice to teenagers on the back of 2000 AD, and it would be things like, I'm getting bullied at school. DR and Quench, can you help me? And their kind of advice was put plutonium in the wee guys and the kids' milk, outside the doorstep, and then, and so their advice to kids getting bullied was, to break out a handheld thermonuclear cannon and lay waste to half the planet just to get somebody, that kind of thing. They're very over the top, and they're very well drawn. Actually, it's great art in it. I'm not too sure who the artist is. Actually, I must have a look. But yeah, I kind of all of I have left of my sort of 2000 AD collection is sort of books like that, I suppose. I have a lot of the old Titan books downstairs, things like the VCs and stuff. My father taught in the UK as an English professor, so he got a lot of these British pulp magazines and 2000 AD comics. Yeah. Yeah, 2000 AD has a Judge Dredd, the magazine. I don't know if it's still going on or not. But yeah, it's solid public. I'm reading it since it's for every week for God knows how many years. And as I said, I just had no room for all these comics. I still had them all, but I gave them to one of my students recently who's well into their comics, so I thought it was a good home for them. So, because I've read them so many times, I used to just go up into the attic and not come back down, you know. But I must pick up some of the old annuals. I got a few of them, but I have a real nostalgia for the 2080 annuals up until they stopped making them, and then they started making yearbooks, which were just not as good, I think. But it was a kind of thing you used to always get those kind of annuals for any kind of comic, you know. But there we go. But yeah, 2080. I mean, Judge Dredd, granted. Hardware, is it the Richard Stanley film? Is a story from Judge Dredd World, isn't it? One of the either 2080 or Judge Dredd annuals. It's based on a story called Shock, which is an absolute cracker of a story. So that there are so many. You talk about all these TV, you know, multimedia, new media platforms and stuff. These mega corporations looking for content. And 2080s, we're talking, it started in 1977 and has been producing high quality science fiction stories for since then, every week, and has managed to sustain its quality. So why 2080 as a, you know, and 2080 is a global product, Brad. You know, you used to always see the price, you know, it used to always give you the price of 2080 up in the corner of the comic, and it would be 6p here or something, and then it would tell you how much it was in New Zealand, how much it was in Australia, and then it would go on to how much it was on Venus, on Mars, on Pluto, and on Betelgeuse, and you know, stuff like that. It was a wee bit meta. But yeah, it's a few of the British pulp magazines. I'm trying to think of a few at the time, but Star Lord, and there was a horror one, and Tornado was another. And all of these comics sort of got they got amalgamated them into 2080. So for a while you have 2080 and Tornado and 2080 and Star Lord and stuff like that. But whichever kind of characters they decided to salvage from the comic, and then they would cast it off, keep some characters, and allowed 2080 to build up a kind of quality of the good stuff, rather, with kind of separating the wheat from the chaff in a bit, you know. But Star Lord was pretty good. If I don't know if anybody knows the Star Lord comic, and I mean that would be the original ABC Warriors and Robusters and stuff, and then Strontium Dogs from there too. Oh dear, speaking of Richard Stanley, the Island of Dr. Moreau's film production was certainly an interesting story. Oh, I missed something there quickly, Grimdark. Sorry, I'll just back up a wee second. Brad said one whole season of the Mulder and Scully show, can't remember the name, was lifted from Thorg's Future Shocks. I knew the end of each episode, enjoy spoiling on my flatmates. I love Thorg's Future Shocks. Thorg's Time Twisters, in particular, I think are very good. Yeah, all those little things. That's the thing, that they're almost like little one-offs that appeared in 2080 over the years, you know. And there was a lot of them. I saw recently, Brad, the collected Thorg's Future Shocks, and I was going, and again, I think a lot of them is Alan Moore, but I was kind of, you know, I was looking around for, I wanted the Time Twisters. Um, I couldn't find it. I was gutted. I thought, why have they put that collection together and not done the other one? You know, I don't know if you guys remember Captain Clep from 2080. It's a very similar idea to Kenny Everett's Captain Kremen. They're kind of sort of piss takes of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, if you know what I mean. I love those. They were great. They're a bit saucy. Grimdark, sorry, back to you, Grimdark. Speaking of Richard Stanley, the Island of Dr. Moreau's film production was certainly an interesting story. Yes, I watched that. There's a documentary, isn't there, Grimdark? And it's kind of, you know, it's one of those. Thing is, the film exists, doesn't it? As I remember rightly, but it's just one of them. This is going to be a living hell for this poor man, you know. And I think it didn't really destroy his reputation for quite some time, rather unfairly, I think. And I suppose, if I'm not mistaken, I think Richard Stanley's back with a vengeance, isn't he? Let me just check if I'm actually talking that he's made the films that I think he's made. Let me just quickly check. So yeah, Hardware. Dust Devil, by the way, folks, was his other one, and the disastrous kind of Island of Dr. Moreau's from 1996. Dust Devil was pretty good too, I think. I'm just looking at this on Wikipedia. Documentary Lost Soul: The Dim Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. 2019, he returned to feature films after more than 20 years, directing The Color Out of Space. That's it. Let me just have a I thought he did something else as well. I don't know if anybody's seen this with Nicolas Cage, guys. The Color Out of Space, H.P. Lovecraft, absolutely brilliant. Loved it. I just thought if you've been away on a hiatus, if you've been in filmmaking, whatever you want to call it, filmmaking limbo, filmmaking hell, Color Out of Space was brilliant. I loved it. If you like Nicolas Cage, H.P. Lovecraft, really good, really good. And I understand I think he's possibly doing a couple more of these Lovecraft things. Grimdark says, "Yep, it was a documentary about Stanley's doomed journey directing the film. I did watch it. I felt really bad for. There's a couple of documentaries like that. There's Man from La Mancha as well. Grimdark. If you haven't seen it, it's the Terry Gilliam one. With Johnny Depp, about how they tried to make Don Quixote. And it was quite a good documentary. I found it quite interesting. But yeah, if anybody hasn't seen Color Out of Space, it's excellent, really good, totally enjoyed it. And there was another film that came out recently in a similar vein. Sorry, I'm very bad at remembering if you're a new director and I haven't seen your work. I'm very bad at remembering your name. Let me see. The film I'm talking about, that kind of one was put. It's called Mandy. I don't know. Has anybody seen Mandy? It's directed by Panos Cosmatos, produced by Elijah Wood, also with Nicolas Cage. Mandy's a cracker, absolutely. Way, really good. Mulder and Scully shows as the X-Files. Yeah, I know, but I'm trying to think of what one specific, but the X-Files had a lot of that. I think that the Brad, as I seem to recall, 2000 AD responded to that with a TV series, not TV series, with a comic strip called Sector 13 or something like that. Kind of an X-Files-y type thing. It was a bit rubbish actually when they go a bit derivative like that. But there you go. But 2000 AD is very much a mirror for British society, well, global society too. And particularly Judge Dredd, I always think it's great that they use American culture to talk about British culture. And there you are. But yeah, good times with the 2000 ADs over the years. But as a kid in Northern Ireland, it was affordable as a comic. It was only a few pennies. Way back in the 70s, where I don't know if I was a kid today, it would certainly be out of my financial reach. I think to pay that amount of money every week for a comic. How the world changes, When I was at university for a long time, because I used to be a poor student for a lot, I would go to this my local news agents whenever I moved anywhere. I always remember going to the one in London and popping into the wee news agent. It's run by a wee Indian man called Mr. Modi and his wife. And I had to kind of negotiate this deal with them, that I wish to buy my 2000 ADs. I want an order from you, that you would get them in every week. But some weeks I don't have money. I'm a poor student. So no matter what, you keep my comics for me. And no matter what, I'll always come in and pay you for them as soon as I get paid. And I'll do my shopping in your shop in the meantime. And he used to keep all my comics for me if I was a bit tight for cash. I was always good to my word. Always did my weekly grocery shopping in the shop and come and go, right, Mr. Modi, can you give me my comics? And he just bring them out like boom, like that, and here's your Judge Dredd. I go, right, excellent, how much do you weigh? And just sort them out. And it was just because I collected them, I didn't want to miss one. That was really important for me to get the news agent to do that. And I had quite a good relationship with the news agents because of it. His wife made really nice samosas. And I used to sit at the Thames because I have a sleep disorder. I'd pop into his shop at certain times and just sit with a stack of 2000 ADs and read them as the sun came up. Things you remember. Just a place called Radnor Park, and you have floods at certain times of year. There's the tree. A tree that appears to be in the middle of the Thames. It's quite cool. Well, there we go, folks. But yeah, I still love all things 2000 AD. Would like to get a few of these collected stories and stuff, but I just don't have that kind of money to waste these days. Hello, Holly Dolly. How you doing? As my dog just popped. But there we go. But listen, folks, I'm just about to wrap things up now because my son's just about to hit the hay and he'll have to get up early for work in the morning. So thank you very much, as always, guys, for joining me. This has all been about setting up your knowledge for how Frank Herbert applies this stuff to the hero. So I think tomorrow's episode we're going to dive in and hello, big love, where you at? Tomorrow's episode we're going to dive in then and actually show you how all this works in the Dune series. And that first episode tomorrow night we'll be looking at Leto the First and the Baron. And they're very important for two reasons. Not just are they heroes in their own right and how you can apply the patterns to them, but also they understand entirely. Both men are propagandists who know how to use the idea of a hero in exactly the same way that Frank's using it against you, the reader. So I think that'll be quite interesting. As usual, folks, we'll have a wee bit of a natter. So if you've got any questions and all that, tomorrow night is always about anything science fiction at all. 2000 AD is always a good. I wrote one of my master's theses was written on 2000 AD, by the way, folks. So there you go. That's how far I took that one. But listen, I hope you can join me tomorrow. And as I said, if you've got any questions or have a natter, it's all good crack. I'm really enjoying this. And I thought I'd be totally burned out by now, but I've just got a head cold and I really... we keep finding things to talk about, don't we? So it's very enjoyable. Anyway, folks, I'm going to head on. So I will say good night and all the very best to all of you, wherever you are, and tell you all to look after yourselves. Take it easy. So thank you very much for joining me, and good night, folks. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Good night, folks. Bye.